Hey everyone, it's Mike with Mike Roberts Reptiles. Today I'm going to be doing a video slideshow for you of the different boas and morphs that I work with. Kind of show you, what this gene does with this gene, and it kind of explain the genes. This video is more for like my friends and family, co-workers, kind of explain things. I didn't go to school for this, but I read a lot of books, and I've been doing this for over 20 years, so I kind of know what I get when I put a certain animal together. So I'm just going to get started, and hopefully you enjoy it. So the first one is we have here is a wild type. This is or normal. This is a common pet store boa. So if you went into a pet store and you picked one up, this is most likely what you would get. I got my first one in 1990. I got it at Walmart, of all places, and kind of was hooked ever since. I think I bred them for the first time in 95, 96. It was a great experience, and I've kind of been doing it ever since. So I've put a few slides of each, different kinds to kind of show you the variations within the category. So just a normal, but you can see it's a little difference in appearance. It's more gray, and as you go down, it gets a little redder. That's why they're called red tails. This is kind of cool. You can see how the camouflage goes through the eye. I always love that about them. And you'll see on the normals that they have a certain saddles with these little white marks on them. And they're all different. So here's another one. And sometimes, like, you can see these two saddles are connected. Sometimes they'll be connected all the way down. And this one, they start to break up about halfway. And then sometimes they're just not connected at all. So this one's got a nice red tail too. Here's just another example of a good looking normal. With a nice little red tail. I like the little whites in between the red, and then that little stripe, and so that's pretty cool. And another normal. That's a pretty cool little spot right there. I like little things like that. How that little saddle there is broken. Here's one that I produced this year. It is really light and orange, so the tail's really orange. The saddles have got more of a rusty look to them, so she just kind of stood out, so I'll hang on to her and see what I get out of her. But just a really good looking normal, and you can just see how orange she is, and just with great colors. So hopefully I'll raise her up, breed her, and that color will come out in some of her offspring. So here's one that I produced a couple years ago, and she came from a really high red female. The female just had orange and red just all over. She was the only one of the normals that had the orange and the pink, but she came out with just super bright tail and just these orange scales everywhere, just all over. So she was definitely a looker. Here she is at about a year, and you can see how they start off gray, but then they turn tan. So they all turn tan, but the orange just popped out in this girl. I mean, it just really came through. And there's the medallion on the side there. And here's just a headshot of the same animal. And here's that line, camouflage line going through her eye again. It's really cool. Okay, the first morph I'm going to talk about is hypomelanistic, or hypo. It is what they call an incomplete dominant trait. So if I take a hypo and I breed it to a normal, I'm going to get around 50% normals and 50% hypos. So it's a 50-50 type deal. So And what it does is it reduces the black pigment and enhances the red, and it changes up the pattern a little bit. You can see how on this particular photo that the medallions are kind of, they don't have that white circle in the middle as much, and they're more of a elongated line. Not all hypos are like that, but you'll see it a lot in the hypos. So this is the same snake we just were looking at. It's just when it was a baby. You can see how they change over time in the color. The older they get, the redder they get. So it's kind of a really cool gene to work with. You can see there's no black around the saddles here. And that's what you want. You want to reduce the black pigment and get as much red as you can. So here's one, and it does, it has black around here. And I'm going to show you later in a what we call super hypo how this has been eliminated as well. But so you have pinks, you have little black around here, you have the bow ties, or what we call them. The saddles are more bow tie-ish, and then the medallions are, instead of circles with dots, they are like more faded out. Here's another hypo. It's got a lot of red in the tail. You can see it's still got some black around here, but eliminating most of the black, and then the red just really comes out. And here's a little cleaner one. Still got the black freckles everywhere. You can see it, and that's, you'll see it in the hypos. They'll have this black kind of line around here, but you can see the bow ties here. So there's a perfect example of a bow tie. You still have that cool camouflage through the eye. Here's one where the hypo gene broke up the pattern in the tail a little bit. You can have a little weird thing going on here and a little stripe going on. It just does some really cool things. So it's a good gene to work with. Okay, so this is what we call a super hypo. So when you breed a hypo to a hypo, 25% should be what we call super hypos. Now, you technically can't sell them as super hypos because you'd have to breed them to prove them out as a super hypo, but you can pretty much tell by the thinned out saddles here and the lack of black around the saddles down here on the tail. So you'll see there is no black around these rings, none at all, not one bit. There's first black speck right there. So that is a most likely a super hypo. So that animal there, if you breed it to a normal, since it's a super hypo, it will produce 100% hypos and no normals. This is the same animal, just a different shot of it. You can still see there's no black on that tail. Okay, and that's just another shot of the first animal we looked at. It's my big female hypo. That's when she was gravid last year. Okay, the next morph I'm going to talk about is the motley. The motley gene is probably my favorite gene there is. I just love the pattern and the contrast, and just that silver head and the black eye there. I mean, that's just a great looking snake to me. Okay, so this is a classic motley right here. So you'll see that the pattern is connected all the way through the entire animal here. So a lot of times you'll see some that start to break up right around in here towards the tail. They'll start breaking up. I don't like that. I like a nice solid stripe motley. So that's a good example. Here's another one. This is just kind of a really unusual motley because they normally don't have that stripe without a pattern like through here. This is a really cool one. This one also came from that high red female, so that's why it's got so much red in it. Here's a couple of my first motleys that I produced. I actually kept both these animals, and they're in my breeders. They're part of my breeding program. Just love the motley gene. This one here is actually het Anery. You can see kind of in the tail it doesn't have much red and it's kind of faded out. Sometimes the Anery gene will do that. So, and we'll talk about the Anery gene here in a little bit. So all the albinos that I work with are a Kahl line or Kahl. It's just a line of albino. There's a couple of different lines. There's Sharp, there's VPI, there's Boa Woman Caramel, but most of everything I work with is this line right here. And here's a a good example of just an albino normal. Now you can still see on the saddles the little lines. You can still see the medallions. This white here is where black would be on a normal. So it's amelanistic. I believe it just takes out the black, so or pigment in general. So they have a lot of contrast as babies, and they're really just beautiful animals. So here's just another example of an albino. Here's one. It's got a little bit more pink in the head. And just a little bit more color throughout. Here's one that has a nice, stripe on the tail. Really love striped tails. To me, it just kind of makes the animal pop. So, and one more. Let's see. Okay, so when they grow up, they normally don't look as good. They kind of yellow out. Still great looking animals. They don't have that same contrast, but they do kind of fade. So I forgot to talk about the albino gene. It is recessive. So in order to get an albino, both the parents would have to carry the gene. So you'd have to have an albino to a het, or a het to a het, or albino to an albino. Unlike the hypo gene, where you just breed a hypo to a normal and you get half and half, this is recessive, so both of the parents will need to carry that gene. Okay, so jungle. Jungle gene is also incomplete dominant, so it means you breed a jungle to a normal, and you should get 50% jungles and 50% normal. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes you're going to get way less, and sometimes you're going to get more. That's just the odds. Jungle gene is very veritable. You can breed a jungle to one female, and it's hard to tell which ones are jungles, and then you can breed the same jungle to a different female, and you get stripes like this. So, but it is a really good gene to work with, and it does some amazing things. So, it's a picture of the same male. There you can just see the stripe. You can see the little circle on the head, and these little white scales kind of indicate jungle. Here's another one from the same litter. You can see how it just did a little different thing to it. You got connecting saddles here. You've got normally where you would have these Batman saddle type things, you have blocks. So the saddles are now blocky. You see that? Blocky. and then the tail. So here's another jungle. Here's the circle on the head. Here's the connected saddles, zigzag type here, and then your stripes and this white around there. Okay, so Anery. This is the only picture of an Anery I have. I just picked up an Anery this year. I've had Anery floating around in my collection, but I've never produced any Anery stuff until this year. So it's a really cool gene if you mix it with different things. It basically just removes the red pigment out of the animal. So you might think, well, why would you take red out of a red-tailed boa? But once you start mixing it in with other things, you get some cool stuff. So I picked this girl up to go with a male I produced that I'll show you here in a little bit. So, back to the Anery gene. It is also recessive, so you would need to have two animals that carry the gene. So now we're going to talk about the combos. The combos, like when you start mixing and matching stuff, this is what you can get. So this photo is of one litter. So these are all siblings. So they're all brothers and sisters. You've got a jungle here. This is a hypo jungle. So you got the the red pigment and then the zigzaggy stuff. And then this is a hypo motley jungle albino. So there's 4 genes in that animal. So that one's hard to make. This one here is what you get when you combine the hypo gene with the albino gene. So this is a hypo albino, or what we call a sun glow. And you can see in the face how bright this is. The pattern just like really pops, and that's why they call it a sun glow. It's because it almost looks like it's glowing. And as this animal gets older, that red from the hypo will kick in, and it will really just, it'll take off and get extremely red. Here's another sun glow. You can see the color's a little different. It's orange. And this one I would say is also a super sun glow, because you've got the really thin saddles here, and the overall appearance is just of a super sun glow. So once again, you wouldn't know until you bred it. So if this was a male and you bred it to a female, and then all the babies were hypos, then that would be a super hypo, super sun glow. Same animal, just a different picture, just to show the different colors. So we have the motley gene here up top, and then we add the hypo gene into the motley gene, and it does some really cool stuff too. This one here is a hypo motley. It's its brother, and you can see how it just lightened it up. Typically, it changes the whole pattern of the snake, but in this particular litter, it retained the circles on the back and just enhanced the red. So it was really cool to see that. I've never had that happen before. And here's another example of the same. I got 3 out of this litter, and they all were kind of the same. So you can see you still have the classic motley pattern through here, but then there's just red is so intense. This is what you normally see when you get a hypo motley. You got a striped tail, you've got blocks all the way here, nothing's connected. This is just like a crazy colored animal too. It's really orange. This is what you typically get when you have a hypo motley. This one also has jungle in it, but you can see how now we're just no connecting saddles and just a nice striped tail. And you can see this. You can see the scales here. Kind of show you that's jungle. Here is a hypo motley that's just a little bit older. The color's starting to come in, and you can just see how that hypo gene has kicked in, and it's just really enhanced red. This is a albino motley, so you've got a recessive and then an incomplete dominant trait there. So most of them aren't as orange as this particular one, but this litter came from a special line of pastel, which is enhances the colors. So you get just a really great looking animal. This is a jungle motley, so you can see now the jungle gene has, instead of having circles, it's more of a blocky pattern through here, and it's broken it up, block, 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 and then it just messes with the tail, and it just kind of fades that tail out. It's a pretty cool look. And this is a hypo jungle. You can see the stripe. You can still see all that little light scales right through there, and just does some really cool stuff. And its sister, another hypo jungle, and you can see the colors even different. This one's like brick red, the other one was orange. It's got the zigzaggies here. Just a really really cool animal. This one here is a super hypo jungle. So 2 copies of the hypo gene and then the jungle gene. See the thinned out saddles, thinned out, and then the zigzaggy pattern here, and you see no black on the tail. It's like a candy cane, no black, which is what you want. And then this one had a really cool like missile on its head. Pretty cool. And that's another picture of the jungle motley. This is a hypo jungle motley albino, so it's a junglo motley. It's 4 genes. They're really hard to make, and I definitely kept this one. So, and that's the same picture as before. This one here is a anathoristic motley that I produced this year. So it's, you know, a lot darker. The eyes are darker. Just the overall pattern. There's no red in it. So that's going to be a pretty cool animal. And this one here is a snow motley. So it's an albino Anery motley. So you're taking out the black pigment and you're taking out the red pigment. So you basically just get a white snake, which is really cool. It's the first year I've produced Anery stuff. I just got lucky and got the right combo together, and I hit one. So here is an example of 3 motleys, different genetics. You've got just an albino motley, and you've got an anathoristic motley, and then you've got a snow motley. So this is just shows you what you can get out of different animals. It's just really a lot of fun. This is an arabesque boa that I produced this year. It does some cool things. It's different pattern, especially towards the tail. It's connecting saddles. And here's an albino arabesque. It is also an incomplete dominant trait, so if you breed an arabesque to a normal, you're going to get 50% arabesque, even though I didn't get 50%. I only got 4 out of the entire litter. But that's just the odds. So here's a picture of the arabesque with just a normal albino, and you can see the just a different color that the arabesque has, the more pink and orange, just because of that different gene. Okay, this is an Aztec boa that I picked up last year. I've got 2 of them now. I really like the pattern. I think it's going to do some amazing things with the hypo gene, an albino gene. It's also an incomplete dominant trait. So you breed this to a normal, you're going to get 50-50. And you can just see that different patterns. So there's circles all the way down. It's really, really cool. This is a IMG boa that I picked up last year. It stands for increasing melon gene, I believe, which just means as this animal gets older, the melon, the black, is going to come out, and it's just going to turn black. So this is when I first bought it. You can see just a little black here and a little black here, and as it gets older, it just gets a little darker, and now you can just see it's getting darker. So will this animal get solid black? I don't think so. It's got the hypo gene in it, which actually fights against that, but it will get pretty dark. So pretty excited about that. And last but not least is a VPI albino. It's a different kind of albino. It just kind of lightens the animal up. Really, really cool looking. I can't wait to get some litters out of my VPI stuff, so I can start mixing and matching all the same combos that I showed you earlier, but with the VPI it gives it just a little bit different look. So it's pretty exciting. So I can't wait to work with that. So that's pretty much everything I've got right now and I'm working with. Always picking up new projects, and maybe I'll update this video at some time, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments, just leave them in the comment section and I'll answer them. And thanks for watching.